if you're doing backups and you're doing it online today, and it takes a lot of time, and your system slow down, your jobs run longer, the customer doesn't get their orders, and now you're doing a snapshot, which is quickly done, and then not only done, but done in a way where you can say, now I can manage all these snapshots. Maybe I mount it somewhere else, or clone the system, or maybe back it up to some cheaper storage and then free up the snapshot. All these features that you talk about has a cost associated, but the benefits has to be explained. The customer has to understand their journey and say, yeah, I really do like that option, right?
Welcome to the Tekitok podcast, where we embark on a journey through the ever-evolving realm of SAP and IT operations, automation, artificial intelligence, and cloud technologies. Whether you're an IT professional, a business leader, or simply curious about emerging technologies and industry insights, our episodes will be your compass in navigating this dynamic landscape with real-world experiences. Join us as we demystify complex concepts, explore innovative trends, and engage in stimulating dialogue with industry experts to empower you with insights that matter. The views expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect the opinions of their respective companies. The producer of this Tekitok podcast assumes no responsibility for any public content, ideas, or recommendations shared.
But today's topic is about cloud storage. It's an interesting topic because as companies and organizations migrate to the cloud or they start a new enterprise application in the cloud, storage is really part of it. So I think going a deep dive on that, what it means for the organization, the cost implications, opportunities, and there's a lot of topics to cover. And I'm very, very happy to have Scott with us, Lynn also with us as usual. Lynn and I are here permanently.
At the hip.
That's right. Scott, welcome to our podcast and our data storage in the cloud episode.
Thank you so much, Jordi. I really appreciate being on here. Thanks.
Scott and I actually go back, so I'm gonna he's very humble, so I'm gonna say Scott is like, hey, if I need some questions answered about these super high class premium storage on for a customer on cloud, or even on prem, I go to Scott and ask him, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And we worked on a bunch of projects together, very large scale, right? So I really appreciate Scott's time here, and I reached out to him saying, hey, Scott, I really need you on this episode because we can't talk cloud without saying storage. So Scott works for NetApp, so he has all the expertise, and not only that, he's like the SAP champion, right?
So I appreciate that. I was actually a customer. I learned Basis back in 1998. 11 years at a great company. I'll give them a shout out. Mine Safety Appliances, now called the Safety Company. And then I actually started my 14th year here at NetApp. But I'm definitely not an expert. I think the only thing I have is a lot of years, as you can see. It has done wonders for my looks, working and seeing a lot of things that worked. And I've also seen a lot of things that probably could be improved.
We're going to take your brain and see what worked and what didn't. And
yes.
Hopefully everyone listening and watching this is going to take some good notes. So, all right. So let's try to frame what is cloud storage. And just if we could understand that for somebody joining this and maybe is operating on-prem and maybe is going to deploy to the cloud at some point, but what is cloud storage?
From the perspective, so we're going to talk about SAP, that enterprise workload. So from that perspective, on-prem, I've spoken with customers all last 4.5, 5 years, specifically about going to the cloud. Big shops, big SAN arrays. When you go into the cloud, that SAN array is no longer there. It's some of the abilities might be there, but it's definitely going to be provisioned differently. It's going to be managed differently, and it's going to be cost differently. So what I see when you go into the cloud, you have choices. And Jordi, you brought up, what is cloud storage? From an enterprise storage perspective, I mean, the simplest terms, if you do a DF on your Linux host on-prem, you see mount points. If you do the same thing in Azure on your Linux host, you're going to see mount points. Those mount points are going to be mounting different devices. If we're talking about Azure, we talk about Azure NetApp Files, or you can talk about Azure Premium Disk, but it's going to have a mount point, just like you have on-prem. The differences are really, if you look at the differences between the 2 or 3 offerings in Azure, they all run the database. They all hit the KPIs where they want to be certified. It's really, the next question is, well, what else can it do besides just running the application? So that's kind of what my job has been, is kind of explaining to those customers, you don't know what you don't know. And when you go into the cloud, here are your options. It is limited compared to if you're on-prem, where you have 20 different vendors that can run SAP. In the cloud, you have basically what the cloud is going to provide. Amazon's the same way, EBS or FSxN for HANA. Google the same. They have their own offerings, as well as a first-party offering with NetApp. So options, and the options always have pros and cons.
Maybe to frame the conversation, I'm sure there are different use cases for cloud storage, right? Even to listen to the music, maybe, but or uploading my photos. But we are here for enterprise applications, not uploading all my pics that are being backed up there, right?
Still important.
Although it's still important. Hey, I get those pictures all the time.
Well, if you're gonna say that, I'm gonna say like I'm gonna migrate SAP, and I want my storage to be Google Drive for my SAP HANA database. No, that's not cloud storage.
So
good luck.
That's why I think we're gonna frame this and putting a couple of use cases. Like, I am an organization. I want to start a greenfield initiative, building a SAP and a cloud, and I need to use the cloud storage. And the other use case is, I'm already have an ERP enterprise application, maybe an SAP as well, and I'm migrating to the cloud. What does it mean from a storage standpoint that I have now migrating there? What does it mean from a cost? What does it mean for additional opportunities that may bring to me, that now, well, can I plug in other services that are offered? What type of storages are out there? What do I need to choose? Those sort of things, right? So let's assume that I'm migrating my storage there together with the application. What are the type of storages maybe that I would need to consider, so I don't go for, okay, one gold storage for everything, and I pay premium, and 2 months down the road, it's like, oh my God, this is really, really expensive.
I've been there.
We all have been there, right?
Yes, we all have been there. So Jordi, to your point, well, no, every SAP shop needs some kind of shared storage. The easiest one is interfaces. Lynn and I were talking before we went live. Interfaces is probably as important as a database. I know a lot of shops live off those interfaces coming in, their orders and orders going out. So that's some type of shared storage, and it has to be resilient. Obviously, it's going to have to be resilient. It doesn't have to be high performing. Typically, those file systems don't have to be high performing, but resiliency as well as disaster recovery. Then you have basically the traditional block storage that's connected to your database. Again, has to be highly resilient, but it also has to be performance. HANA is the only database that has specific KPIs to hit, but that doesn't mean Oracle or DB2 can't hit or doesn't have different ones. They still need to be high performing. HANA just has specific KPIs that we have to hit. So those are, from my perspective, those are the 2 storages that I see for SAP shops. There's got to be a shared storage. Windows shops will have a CIF share, and all HANA systems will have typically an NFS share out there, plus the database enterprise storage.
I'm gonna specify a little bit more detail, because I'm a tech guy, right? So the customer need to understand that, okay, I can still have my local disk on my virtual machine. That's typically not something we're talking about, say, cloud storage. Yeah, all of that stuff is still native. Think about a machine that needs like a boot drive and all that, right? But once you start talking about massive amount of data, like a database, or a lot of transactional files or interface files and things that needs to be in a shared use, not just by that machine, then that's where you start having to consider, well, what do I put it on? So I think the use case Scott, I think we when we go architect for a new customer, for instance, right? The use case is you got to break it down, like Jordi said. You can't just like put everything on a goal, and you might go like, okay, I need local. This is this. My database is this. Maybe my backup is this. My logs are this, and my data is this, and maybe all of my interfaces and my other things are that. So, what do you see as the trend, Scott, that customers like? I guess when they want high performance, we're talking about customers running SAP. You can't go for like the lowest, cheapest thing, right? So what sort of thing do they get into when they start thinking about, hey, comparing what they've got on-prem versus on cloud, things that are important to consider?
So you bring up a really good point, and it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. And I hit this probably once a week where a customer is migrating. They're migrating from on-prem into the cloud. I don't really hit too many greenfields anymore, but the migration, and they're so used to building and having a plethora of options on-prem, but in the cloud you don't. You touched on something. The logs would have a different file system or different storage. The database might have a different storage. I'll give you a really good example of a large shop that is looking to move. For instance, they're using Azure NetApp Files for the database, specifically for data management features that we haven't really got into yet, but they're looking to optimize, but they're also maybe looking to get better performance from the log volume, for the HANA log. They're going to move that to local SSD and then have the database still on ANF.
I see.
In that aspect, I mean, you could say like, okay, I'm reducing one storage pool and increasing the other, but from a performance perspective, we're now cutting the I/O to one path to the logs, and then we have a totally dedicated path to the data. And from a data management point of view, they're not giving up anything in that scenario. The cloning, the snapshotting, the fast restore. The logs are now gaining essentially a dedicated path. And if HANA log backs up, the whole system kind of slows down. So I've actually seen that pop up probably in the last 3 months, 4 or 5 shops that are looking to migrate into that model. And I can tell you that was not a model that was available just last year. Microsoft has now supported that. Support is what do you want to call it, a hybrid approach where we have log on a separate and then data on another one.
Right. Do you think once a organization goes to the cloud and defines the initial storage strategy, what to use for what, and etc., they need to change? Because, hey, if something is clear now, is storage grows exponentially. So storage grows so much than the business may be growing at 3% and the storage is growing at 30%. So just the amount of data that is being produced, generated, and consumed and analyzed, and all of that is huge. So I would assume that after a couple of months or 3 months, it's like, oh, this is not good. So should I think, okay, let's just plan my storage for the initial get-go, and then start evaluating how things are growing and what other opportunities. How easy is for me to then change the storage strategy that I'm using to something that adapts better to how am I growing the data.
So let me take a good example. When we did on-prem SAP and you're doing an SAP system refresh, that had to last 36 to 48 months. So I know for a fact I didn't want to go back to the well within 24 months. So I built that system to hit a future workload, and to Jordi, to your explanation, that was going to grow into that footprint. That's what capital expense is. Flip that now, and that's what I try to convey to customers who are going in there. You have options. Why don't you build what you need for right now, because you're going to be built on what you have right now, and make sure whatever storage you're going to choose can grow with you. Sometimes from a HANA perspective, capacity doesn't grow as much, but throughput definitely grows. You will need higher throughput on a database startup. Same thing with file backup. And the month you'll need those throughput. And from an on-prem mindset, we always build our stripe sets to meet that heavy workload at the end of the month. And we also had to make sure that fit into that 36 or 48 month window. So we're way over provisioned. The idea is to pay for what you need when you need it and be able to shrink it. I didn't have that opportunity when I ran. I mean, we were on-prem. And I think that is something that is really unique into the cloud that customers really aren't looking to take advantage of. And Lynn, you can relate to this. The ability to increase and decrease throughput on the fly, non-disruptively, is pretty unique. And specific circumstances that would be really beneficial. But if you don't plan your infrastructure out right in the cloud, that's one of the things you lose out on.
Yeah, I can reflect on that. I think this save customer downtime actually. So take, for example, just simple use case, right? Oh, your system is growing. Not I'm talking about month, but like today, suddenly you're getting a lot of transactions. Maybe it's month end, maybe something you unexpectedly, and it's just hammering the system. Lots of batch jobs, and then you growing, and then your log volume is filling up. So in the traditional sense, when people just do a lift and shift from on-prem to cloud, they might have provision like, local disks. And, all the Linux guys love this. You go in there like, hey, I can just have my volume and I can add my physical volume and I just put on some extra space. Eventually, or you like the all Linux style where you're creating partitions, my goodness, you're in trouble. Because like by the time you react to this, your system might be already frozen from running out of space, right? So whether it's a space or whether it's like, oh, I got this job, it's running really slow, it's writing to the database, and I just need more throughput. It's unbelievable now what is available that you can just go in there. It's not the physical stuff you have on-prem. It's like you're the cloud, it's virtualized. You have no idea where it is. You don't know how it is, but all you get into a GUI or a command line and you can extend this thing. Immediately, we had cases where like 1 terabyte volume, and we needed to expand real quick for either performance or space. We just went to like 8 terabyte immediately, like within less than a minute. I've got 8 terabyte. Now my throughput went from, I don't know, it was like 20 millisecond throughput, IOPS timing, right? Latency went down to like sub millisecond. This is like the cloud storage we're talking about for enterprise workload. You have to be able to take advantage of this. Otherwise, you don't just want to pay for storage and not use all these features. I think my hands-on experience is like that's really beneficial.
And not only that, Jordi, to your point of view, like are we just putting storage out there and buying that storage? I'll give you a concrete example. Like within Azure, we have Premium V1, Premium V2, and we have Azure NetApp Files for the database. 2 of the 3 can do exactly what we're speaking about. 1 out of the 3 is going to be the least expensive. Now, Lynn, to your example, when those business is booming, it's Black Friday, all of a sudden your database is crawling into the hole, we need more throughput. 2 of those 3 options can help you out. Are they more expensive than the version 1 disk? Yes. But I can tell you now you're actually giving value back to the business. And yes, that added storage features are benefiting back to the business. And if you're doing with SAP, realize what does it mean for downtime or system slowness? It's not an option. So those
I would think that something that I would be look for is in the storage many times is reactive because the storage team doesn't know what the business is trying to do. And all of a sudden, as Lynn mentioned, there is an inflow of data because somebody just ran something huge or they deploy a whatever that is, it starts just to overflowing the environment. And all of a sudden, the storage team is trying to react very quickly. Is that problem maybe not solved, but the technologies and capabilities of the cloud storage can reduce the risk and mitigate the risk of
the unknowns. The unknowns. I wouldn't say they're completely unknown. They're kind of predictable, but you don't know when it's going to be hitting you, right? You say some point in time, I need more capacity, more throughput. I just don't know exactly when, but when it happens, I need to have a run book already that what I'm going to do to address that. And I think that's important to think about cloud storage as in something very could be very inflatable, both in size and in speed. And the cost goes with it, but then you can shrink it down, right? So I think that's kind of, you can be the hero of your organization if you are like, I give you an example of what that expanded use is. A lot of customers, SAP customers, go to cloud and then they say, I would love to have analytics. I want to use this Tableau or AWS QuickSight or Redshift or Power BI. I'm gonna provide all these executive real-time answers to all their questions because they may have a quarterly update. And he's on CNBC talking or something. And what you need to do is be prepared for this data that actually now you can't predict like a traditional. So SAP traditionally you'd have transactions or a BW system will have batch jobs and stuff. But now you got this thing where you don't know there's a data adapter that's hooked into HANA, for instance, that is feeding a massive Redshift for analytics stuff. And when it runs, you don't know. But when it's starting to hit your system performance, right? So this unpredictable workload becomes something that is very important to think about for cloud use of your system. It's not just the traditional use of your SAP system anymore. And I think that's why cloud storage becomes extremely important for that purpose.
And you touched on, so it hit my head when you said reactive versus proactive. My old CIO, my old job was always saying, being proactive is the way to go. We don't want to be reactive. Some instances you can't avoid it, but think about what you can do now compared to you did on-prem. Like infrastructure as a code wasn't even a thing when you have hardware gear. So HANA has all the triggers. In fact, I recently started delving into this. Thank you, Ralph Clark and Toby Brandel, for helping me with this. But SAP HANA has triggers to see how the storage is going. You now can do infrastructure as a code, so you can feed and look at those stats, and when you see a threshold starting to hit, and for a specific throughput you have already set, why not increase your throughput on the fly? 10, 15 minutes later, you're sampling again, and then decrease that down. Now, you can do that right now with infrastructure as a code. You just need, we already have the triggers, just somebody with orchestration skills can do that. So now you can be proactive, and my boss would have loved me because now not being reactive and getting the help desk saying, why is the system slow? It's like, no, we hit this plateau, we're going to increase throughput for X amount of time and then decrease that back down. Knowing, as Lynn, you said, it would increase costs. But again, why don't you leverage the technology that you went to the cloud for, not just from an OpEx or CapEx to OpEx, to leverage the technology that you are using. That's why it goes... It goes important, like I said, speaking with customers, you don't know what you don't know. And I mean, I didn't know this. You could do this like 5 years ago. Now in this business, it's like you speaking with customers in that same position that they're just going in there. Make sure you understand the options that are out there because we've all been through a refresh. It's hard to change anything once the systems are built. You want to be risk averse, so I get it. But if you do it right the first time, then you can look, I'm prepared for this. But if you just look at the lowest cost dollar option out there, and then you run into these scenarios, which let's face it, everybody runs into these same scenarios, very similar scenarios. Now you have at least an option.
That's perfect.
So moving to the cloud, I have more services. I can get more storage very quickly, have more alerts. I can integrate easier with other cloud services for business analytics, intelligence, whatever that is, because now my storage is there. I'm expecting all that flexibility. I'm expecting faster IOs at a lower cost, right? Because moving to the cloud is, I'm expecting all of this, but I'm also expecting lower cost because storage is perceived as, or the cost of storage is going down per terabyte. Yes, but there is services on top of it. There is a lot of software and etc. What is the cost structure management that are in the cloud that organizations need to know and aware of on, different type of storage, different services, of course. How is that from somebody moving to the cloud?
I think it's important if you're an existing, let's face it, most shops that are going to the cloud have an existing SAP landscape. They should have their profiles or the systems. I've spoken with customers who are migrating, like, what do we need? Well, Lynn and we've all done this. We can hit the KPIs for SAP HANA. Does that mean you need more or less? I don't know, but here are the KPIs. If we can get the customer to get us data then we can properly size those systems when they go in there. That's probably knowing your environment before you get in there it's a discovery, and it's really important because storage is a necessary evil. I mean, it is, but if you deal with it correctly, it can actually give benefits all the way up to the stack, not just running throughputs and basically providing the base necessities of the storage. That's what my job is, to essentially educate and help. Like, we can do more than just this.
So do you think when somebody migrates to the cloud, if they have broken down infrastructure cost on servers and networking and storage, let's just put three, do you think the cost of storage goes up by going to the cloud, or the cost of storage will go down? Or maybe I'm looking at it in the wrong way.
From experience, the cost of storage is always an afterthought. The compute's the number one they look at, and then everything kind of follows off that for an SAP HANA environment specifically because of the compute costs. It really depends what they have on-prem. It's fun speaking with customers that have a large SAN system that did block storage that ran really well, but didn't have any features. Then when you go into the cloud, it's kind of like, well, I didn't know you could actually take a picture of the HANA database in an application consistent way. I mean, we couldn't do that on-prem, so I didn't know that was even available if I go into the cloud. And it's like, yes, so this goes back to the pros and cons. That's the options in Azure. Might be an option that is a little bit more expensive, but gives you those abilities.
Right, gives you more stuff.
So my experience with that is, if you sit down before you do it and talk about the features of why you go into the cloud. Like, so we had an episode about cloud earlier on, best practices. And one of the things, you have to understand what you're getting into. What are all the things, if you're going to compare a Ferrari versus a Honda or whatever it is, you need to know what you're buying, what the features, why you're going into it. For instance, if I say the cost will be higher, I'm not going to lie, but this is what you get. Okay, for example, if your system is down, I can recover in less than 15 minutes because I have snapshots. And if the customers don't use that today, they don't know it, or they don't have the storage technology to do it, that is invaluable. What is that to the business, right? So you can't really measure that by dollar terms. You can do it, try it. So that's one use case. The other one is, if you're doing backups and you're doing it online today, and it takes a lot of time, and your system slow down, your jobs run longer, the customer doesn't get their orders, and now you're doing a snapshot, which is quickly done, and then not only done, but done in a way where you can say, now I can manage all these snapshots, maybe I mount it somewhere else, or clone the system, or maybe back it up to some cheaper storage and then free up the snapshot. All these features that you talk about has a cost associated, but the benefits has to be explained. The customer has to understand their journey and say, yeah, I really do like that option, right? These are important things. And then the other one they don't think about is, to me, on cloud, your storage is not just one copy. You can end up with multiple copies of it, right? Because I may have archiving, I may have snapshots, I may have replications, I may be in a different zone for disaster recovery. So think about the cost of just not one copy. If I fully think the capabilities and I want to leverage it, then I'm prepared to say, I'm going to pay for this, as opposed to thinking I just have one copy of things. And that's not the way cloud works. You can have multiple copies for disaster or high availability, or for archiving, or the other topic we talk about, like ransomware or something like that, right?
And you ticked off a lot of bells in my head. Think about what we could do on-prem before. I mean, we had virtual machines, but we couldn't make a big, in my era, a big M5000 Sun system just magically appear. In the cloud, you can do that. Now, you're referencing we can take a snapshot of the data easily. We can clone that data, but that doesn't really matter if I don't have any compute to easily associate with it. Those are the things that I wish I had when you're doing on-prem. And when I speak with customers going from on-prem into the cloud, these are the things that they probably didn't think about. I mean, I've spoken to a customer like last month, 6 terabyte HANA database. They do file backup. It takes multiple hours to back that up. They're fine with that. You go into the cloud, you can still do that. But going back to like, why not take advantage of the technology that's available to you? How about a snapshot of that database in, I don't know, 20 seconds? Well, why would we do that? Well, because you could. And then going back to your business, I always say FICO and SD and HR were like the three big heavy hitters from the business process teams. Would always say, Scott, can we get a copy? We don't want to mess up. We know FICO's in there. We need just to run payroll. And is there any way to give us a sandbox? And my answer was, what's your cost center? And give me a couple months and I'll have the system up. That's totally swung around now. And if you leverage the technology, it's like, sure, I'll take a picture of production, do a repair system. I can spin up compute. I'll give you the IP address, log into it, do whatever you need to do. When you're done, spin it down, stop paying for what I just used. Those things, and it's fun for me to speak with customers because I actually did that on-prem. Now you can actually do that in the cloud, actually all three clouds, and it's fun because you can start, if you speak with a business process people and they say, would you care if I give you a sandbox of a production system that was only 30 minutes old compared to the QAS system that's 6 months old? Would that matter to you? Like, tell me one business process person that wouldn't say, like, can you do that? I'm like, sure.
Yeah. This is where I get paid a big dollar, Scott. So you just remind me.
We know that.
I think that there was this critical time when a customer was seriously had data corruption, right? And they're like, well, what do we do? I mean, we have all these things that are running. We don't even know what caused it. We just know when it happened.
Yeah.
But we need a system up, roll back in time so that they can go and verify up to that point. If that's okay, then we can tell the business we need to roll back business to that exact point, and we'll be up within an hour, right? Or 2 hours. And we can rerun these other jobs that has run in the system. And this is something that was almost impossible to do before without this cloud and the storage. And so of course I was tapped on the shoulder and got the big bucks. Hopefully it was bigger, but I saved by saying, hey, I came up and said, look, it just came out of my head. I think I can get you this system on this other standby database with a copy of your production from a snapshot from, whatever last snapshot we had hours ago. I can roll your forward logs up to this and then bring it up. You guys can log in and verify. And if you're done, that's the copy I'm going to restore for you too. And they were able to do this. And again, I don't know how much time and energy would have, more likely corruption, data that would just completely wipe out future business process if they weren't able to do that. So something like that, I think you can't put a dollar value to it, but having the cloud storage, the ability to do that, you couldn't do that with the local attached storage in that amount of time. You'd really have to go through, anything's technically possible, but when you're in a crunch, you just need something that works. You have a procedure, you've tested it, this thing works fine, right? And that was amazing, the way that this kind of make everything solvable in a short amount of time. Because when you're down, man, you're sweating.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So I think earlier in my career, I enjoyed having this super complex environment. Block storage here, zoning there, being able to do things that were complex, but it worked. Like 20 plus years later, I just want something simple and works and gives me some unique features. I'm tired of having a very complicated mousetrap. So to your point, when you can give business value back to the business, because I was always told you're a cost center, not a profit center. So if we can give a little bit more back to the business, doing exactly what you did, I think every SAP basis administrator that has done this job has been in those situations. Okay, that's insurance. This is why we're paying a little bit more for this service compared to the least expensive service. Yeah. But one thing I've learned in SAP is time trumps everything.
So absolutely. As I'm getting older, time also means everything to me. So just one more point on that. I think from the perspective that it's important to get things simple. It's also important to think about the business doesn't get involved in IT. Obviously, they do approve budgets, but it's important for IT to explain to them that these capabilities do cost, and there's some kind of way to, let's say, for instance, chargeback, right? So in the cloud, we are able to do that now, where you can very accurately. Before, you might have shared infrastructure that you just have no idea somebody owned that hard assets. But now you get a bill, you get, okay, this system consumed this much storage. So from a cost optimization standpoint, for instance, we went to a customer had originally had a system that was non-production testing, cost this much with this storage. But originally they needed it because they needed it for testing and go live. But after that, you can go back to them and say, you know what, I propose the system will get downsized it's still cloud storage, but we have different class tier performance we can go to. It's better price performance value. And they were totally fine with that. And they were actually happy to say, hey, I didn't know we had this option, right? So there's a bit of education once you're in the cloud. It's very important to say this is available. But I think let's lead way into one other topic, because we talk about backups and things like that before, but not in the context of our cybersecurity month recently in October. So we talk about ransomware a little bit. Scott, what do you think? What do you see anyway? How many customers are thinking in the back of their head now, I need something that will support me when I have a ransomware attack? What does that mean in a cloud storage, a trend or use case?
To answer your question, every customer has said something about ransomware. Every customer since on the news where that pipeline was hacked into and taken over, that really lit up a lot of radars lit up. So since those very public, last one was MGM, last one, or every customer.
It wasn't MGM an SAP customer?
I'm not sure if they're SAP or not.
I think they're bought by Amazon now, but I think MGM was actually SAP.
Were they SAP runs?
No.
Regardless, it made the news, and it made the news for a reason. The IT department was probably running and sweating and like going, what's going on? So to your point, the best way to defeat ransomware is to have great security. I'm not a security expert, so the next layer down that I'm responsible for is ensuring that database has multiple application consistent pictures all throughout the day. So if I'm only doing one backup a day, I now have 23 hours plus whatever open for, like, something happens and you got to roll your database forward. That's a pain. So if I have multiple pictures of a database that is leveraging the storage technology that allows me to say, you know what, I have 4 or 6 pictures of this database that I can go back to. Or to your point, how many people restore the production database? They create a repair system off of it and then do troubleshooting there. Those are the type of technologies that is extremely important for ransomware. I mean, I'd rather have 10 pictures of my database than one backup a day.
I get excited when you say that.
So the key is the ability to do that with the minimum amount of required time and minimum data loss. Right? So
right.
Can we get there? Like, we could restore to 2 hours, 15 minutes ago, because that's the point that we got this ransomware, and this is going to take 2 minutes to do. So in 2 minutes, you're back in business. Or listen, in 2 days, you're back in business, which maybe not.
Yeah. I think even before that, you weren't able to do things. So ransomware, one of the weird things about ransomware, when I start working on, I'm like, what is it different than maybe HA or DR backups or just regular backups, archive, maybe compliance backup. And it was explained to me. I say, oh, well, ransomware, we never know when they got into the system. They could get in the system 3 months ago and just lay low and put some stuff in there. So I need to be able to have immutable copies of my database that goes back forever, that was scanned and say, hey, this is a good copy. There was no ransomware signature in here. And how do I do that with traditional storage? I really can't, right? So I need to back it up somewhere and then have that copy somewhere in the enclave of safety and be scanned and then say, oh, yep, this is a good copy. We're going to put this guy away for good. And then eventually when we have some, God forbid, incident, we can go back and see which copy do we need that was clean, that we will bring back. And this is like, Back to the Future. I'm going to go back and then I'm going to take my DeLorean and go back to the future after I become the hero and everything's fine. So that's, to me, the cloud storage. Without that, it's very hard to do. It's not impossible. It's very hard to do because you don't know when you're going to need to go back to.
And to this point, I've been very careful of not being focused on what my company does, but I can't pass this one up because that's exactly what Azure NetApp Files does within Azure. Taking pictures of the database, being able to move them over to blob storage for long-term retention, being able to copy them back out from a year ago and light up your system to see what it's like. Those are some unique benefits specifically for the ransomware shops that are looking like, how do I protect? That's the best way. And those pictures of the database, we can replicate them over to a different region. And I know Lynn and I both worked with a customer. They actually replicated them to, but they're on-prem. So they have multiple pictures of their database, that's from a database perspective. We're not talking just one file that got corrupted. We got to get the entire all structured data of that database. And that's hard to do without Azure NetApp Files. And that's my one plug. I did for like 30 minutes without it, but that is really unique. And that's what I
can vouch for it. I can vouch for it. Again, it's a very difficult topic, ransomware. I think we will definitely have more episodes talking about this because it's complex. It's not one dimension. It's like a multi-dimensional puzzle you need to solve. Because you said very importantly is that when you know you are had ransomware touch, it's not one thing, right? You don't know where. So completely, your entire network could have been compromised. Your entire, including Active Directory, including everything. You don't know where they went, right? So it's important for the customer to be able to get everything back somewhere at some point in time that they know is relatively clean from that standpoint. And to do that, you're not going to restore one disk. You're going to want like a massive multi-terabyte capacity to be able to move and inflate up in somewhere a new network, right? So that is amazing stuff that wouldn't be able to do on-prem. Forget it. I can't even imagine on-prem trying to do something like that.
I do miss that. Those are some of these features I do miss, not being able to do that on-prem.
Awesome. Hey, Scott, thank you for joining us today. It's been incredible insights on the world of storage security opportunities that brings to organizations and to our listeners. So awesome. Thank you very much,
That's
Scott,
exciting.
for your time.
Thank you, Scott, for entertaining me, and good to catch up again on this episode. So I would like to, plug future episodes. So you have interesting scenarios. So one time I would like to actually dig into one scenario for an entire episode. This customer had this, and I'm gonna like break it apart and tell you exactly how storage saved the day, right? So that'll be like the hero with the cap on. So that'd be kind of cool.
The cool thing is those stories, although they're fun to speak to, you always see a basis guy go like, yeah, that has happened. It's like, yes, we all have unique systems. They're all unique, but we've all been through these scenarios where somebody's like rubbing the back of your shoulder saying, you need to get the system going. It's like, this is not helping.
All right, folks.
All right.
Thank you very much. Until the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.